Welcome to this, the first episode of World in a Frame. This is a channel that we started. We all of us, we don't know each other, but we sort of met in a Reddit group, and what we have in common is that we have a love of cinema and wish to talk about this. My name is Rasmus. I'm 47. I'm from Denmark. And if the rest will introduce themselves, Thomas.
I'm Thomas. I'm 21. I'm from Austria. I study film at the University of Vienna. And that's about it.
Dorit.
Yeah, my name is actually Risha. I don't know which name to go by. Dorit is like my screen name, so just call me whatever you want within reason. I'm from a scientific background, so I work in like research and development in like the physics world. But yeah. Been a very big film enthusiast for many years. I don't know. I didn't prepare a bio. Sorry, I don't really know what else to say. But yeah, I live in London. I've got 2 kids. And okay. Next person.
That's great. Filipp?
My name is Filipp. I'm from Moscow, Russia. I'm 20 years old, and I study economics management and computer science at Bocconi University in Milan. And I have recently discovered my love for film in various films, I would say.
Yes. And Aristo?
I am Rishi. My first name is Rishi, and display name is Aristo. I am 21 and I am from India. I'm studying computer science, and from a very young age, my father used to show me all kinds of cinema. Like he used to show me foreign films and some art house Indian movies. So I developed the love for cinema at a very young age. And after 18 years old, I became very my love for cinema grew very much, and after coming to college I watched a lot of foreign films and a lot of indie films. So yeah, basically right now I like to analyze and review movies, and I like to listen to various podcasts, and
And that was the panel. And this was the reason for this was exactly that we wanted to explore that how cinema, different movies, how they are perceived for different people with different backgrounds, different countries, nationalities, and different ages, and so on. So this is actually perfect. We have quite an array of people here. So the first movie that has been chosen for us that we have seen and will be discussing is Malena from 2000, Giuseppe Tornatore's movie. And Aristo, you were the one who chose this. So maybe you could just start by saying a little bit about why is it that you chose for us to see this movie?
So basically, in my 20s, I started following cinema a lot much. So I watched a film called Audition, and after watching that movie, I was underwhelmed. I did not understand much about it. So I researched online and read reviews. So there was one review which was on r/true film. So it spiked my interest in that movie quite a lot. So I watched that movie 3 to 5 times after reading that review. So like after reading that review, I got to know that many times when we watch a movie and if we are not very stuck to it, or if we are not seeing it, like we are not paying a lot of attention to it, or we are not picking on the details, we could miss a lot of things, which that review pointed out to me. So after reading that review, interested a lot of, I was interested much in reviews. So the first film which I watched after that review was Malena. So I was very excited about writing about that movie. So yeah, I paid a lot of attention while watching that movie, and therefore, and I uploaded my review to r/true film, and after revisiting that review after 10 months, I'm very proud of that review and I feel good about it. So therefore, I suggested that.
A world at war. A young man coming of age. And a woman who changed his life forever.
Buongiorno, signora Malena.
Vieni qua, me ne vai a comprare le sigarette.
Yeah, Malena is a film about a young boy who is called what again? Renato, right? That's the boy.
Yeah.
And he's living in a small town in fascist Italy. The film takes place in the 1930s and 40s. And he gets obsessed with the so-called most beautiful woman in town, who is the titular Malena. And yeah, it's an exploration of kind of growing up and discovering the boy discovering his sexuality and so on, but also of course about how the town views this woman not as a human being but as an object of desire. And yeah, the whole film is very voyeuristic in that sense, or at least the characters are. I don't think there's much more to explain about the plot. It's not such a plot-heavy film. It's really more about the whole concept of how we see Malena, how the characters see Malena, and how they act towards her. My thoughts about the film, yeah, I liked it quite a bit. I think Giuseppe Tornatore, he is obviously most well known for Cinema Paradiso, which is his big love letter to cinema, and the only film of his that I had seen previously to Malena. I didn't even know it was him when I watched Malena. That's the funny thing. I was watching it, sitting there and thinking, wow, this director, he has such an eye for great visuals and so on. He creates such beautiful images. Who is this guy? And then I click on his name on Letterboxd and see, of course, it's the guy who did Cinema Paradiso. That makes perfect sense. The movie looks absolutely beautiful, in my opinion. The way he captures the city in these great big aerial shots and so on. Or one of the final scenes, or the final scene, I think, takes place at the beach, and it's also quite beautifully framed. So from a purely technical and aesthetic standpoint, it's really a great film. And of course, the whole thing about viewing women in society, especially set in fascist Italy, which is of course a time and place even more conservative than nowadays, so to speak. So yeah, that was all very interesting. I didn't quite fall in love with this film in any way. I thought it was, as I said, well made, interesting in concept, but it's not a film that blew my mind exactly.
Yeah, so I agree with basically everything that you said, Thomas. I didn't think it was, it didn't blow my mind, let's say, but it was very visually striking. absolutely loved looking at it. I watched it twice because the first time I watched it was a couple of weeks ago, or maybe even a few weeks, and I was a bit worried that I would have forgotten everything about it. So I watched it again this morning. And I guess on my second viewing, I felt like it was I was more focused on it being the story of this boy, really. You know, I know that we see all these events through his eyes, but it's really about how his sort of psyche and his judgments of what's happening. We're seeing his personal development through this, you know, what's going on with this other character, the Malena character. So I thought that was pretty interesting. You know, his viewpoints of her and how he kind of analyzes what's happening to her really change quite a lot, you know, throughout the film, depending on what he's witnessed. And, you know, he has this kind of, I guess, privileged view of, like, you know, he's spying on her all the time, basically. So he gets this inside perspective. And, you know, whether that is how we would explain why he's one of the few people that are sympathetic towards her. You know, I also thought his father being an anti-fascist, that got some kind of role there. You know, the example that his father is giving to him of sort of, you know, being willing to have a different viewpoint and things like that. So giving him this kind of ability to be open-minded, maybe. What else? Yeah, there's the obvious... something else I picked up from my second viewing. I don't want to go on too long, but there were some interesting things that I noticed, which is that Malena is not from this village or small town or whatever. And I think that's really important. Something I missed the first time when I was like, why are they picking on this particular woman? It's not so much, yes, it's sort of sexism and everything, but, you know, there's a brothel. There's that other woman who's like the mistress, the other blonde woman who's the mistress of some powerful guy. You know, no one has an issue with them. It's just her. And I think it's this combination of her being a woman without some man attached to her, and also that she's not from there. You know, she came in, and so it's this kind of like small village microcosm. And that reminds me, actually, one of the things I thought was done really well was how the build up to this scene in the square was just this increasing sense of claustrophobia. And I just was quite impressed with that as well. But yeah, I'll leave it there.
When I watched the movie, I kind of liked it. And I don't know why, but I thought that basically the boy is a stand-in for camera. And basically this is a movie about female gaze. I think this movie tries to call out it. And I think what the boy goes through with his excessive love for, mad love for Malena, is, I think, what Gilles Deleuze described in his book Oedipus as deterritorialization. And basically when a person liberates themselves from the constraints of society and begins to desire a lot of stuff, they can break free from the society. And Gilles Deleuze calls out the link between fascism and psychological restrictions that nuclear family causes in human beings. And I think boy first breaks the bonds of this restrictions of family on love, on desire, and then we see how fascist Italy collapse and new democratic Italy is born. And I think that's why I actually liked the movie. And I think it's necessary to mention that I thought that the landscape was so sun-drenched that it was suffocating, especially in the beginning. So I actually enjoyed, not because I liked the visuals or, score, which was excellent, but more because of this message.
For me, I must say that I enjoyed the first half of the movie the most, and then I think it sort of went in a way that I didn't really think was that good. For me,
what do you mean by half? What's the half for you? Where does that end?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that sort of after the trial, something happens at that point where the story sort of it becomes a different story for me, and then I also the whole concept of being this is sort of an ode to cinema, also that all these scenes where he imagines cinema, I thought that was quite nice, and it sort of reminded me of Fellini's Amarcord in many ways. Yeah. And I'm one of the things I would like to discuss with you is how much do we believe this? Because I have many things where I simply think that this is actually the grown-up Renato thinking back on his childhood, and this is his constructed memories. He's constantly making up things in his mind, his fantasy, and some of the scenes are very obvious when this is his fantasy, but I have sort of a feeling that many scenes are simply his recollection of how things were and not sort of the objective truth we are watching.
I agree that it's not objective in that sense. It's definitely a film that's shown through the eyes of this character, but I don't really see much indication that it's necessarily a recollection of him from when he's older or anything like that. I just think it's subjectively shown through his eyes how he sees it, which of course cinema is inherently a subjective medium. Every decision you make, wherever you place the camera and so on, is going to be subjective and can't include everything, obviously. And I'm also not sure if I'd say that it's exactly an ode to cinema, because the way that these fantasies in which he imagines himself to be a movie star or a Western cowboy hero, whatever, or in the jungle, Tarzan, anything like that, it's usually very selfish, very superficial, where he just imagines himself to like save the girl and then get to obviously have sex with her or whatever. So I think the film, the entire film, criticizes this exact behavior of having this fantasy view of yourself and the women around you, and in general, just in general, I'd say. So I don't think that the film is exactly glorifying these cinematic fantasies, but rather criticizing it.
So I think that the film also think that the film criticizes these fantasies, but I also think this film pays some homages to, for example, Vittorio De Sica and Federico Fellini. I think it's more of he loves some of the movies, and I think he loves cinema, but I think he also knows that some desires, some fantasies are wrong. So I think it's a love letter to cinema, but it's also a call to get rid of these fantasies in cinema and not produce them in the audience, I guess. That's what I thought.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I mean, I have to admit, I'm not super well versed in Italian cinema. I mean, I've seen my handful of Fellinis and Antonionis and whatever. But usually, I mean, you can see definitely a very big difference between the kind of Hollywood style, especially classic Hollywood style films that these fantasies kind of mirror. I think there was a very clear reference to Stagecoach, for example, the John Ford film. Or Tarzan, for example, as well, which are very different from what we usually see in European cinema from around the same time. For example, in Italy, we have famously neorealism, which is kind of an antithesis to this Hollywood dream fantasy stuff, even if it's in more realistic settings like westerns or the jungle or whatever, but it's still fantasy. And yeah, this discrepancy, I think, is very interesting between the realism of the Italian cinema and the fantasy of the American cinema.
I think that in the starting, we are shown through the eyes of Renato. So the starting of the movie is shown very playfully as compared to like realistically depicting what Renato is doing. That whether as he was fantasizing about Malena, it was not shown in a dark light. I think that it was shown maybe playfully, as compared to what's the name, the director, as compared to Kids, which came in 1999, which showed puberty and going through the ages of 18 and 19, that how the young people are fantasizing about a lot of things and how they are disrupting the society. So it is not shown in that manner. I think that in the first half of the movie, puberty and Renato point of view is portrayed like very playfully, and I think it is portrayed in that sense as to make the audience subdue and not to pay more attention to the movie and in order to criticize that movie, and they were not making us very serious and keeping us on the edge of the seat. It was feeling like a very comfortable or teen type of movie, which at the middle took a turn, and I think that it went from there to explore some deeper and dark topics, I think.
Everything was very amplified in that sense.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure it was meant to be believable in the sense that it was super realistic, her being lynched in the middle of the public square. It's sort of that's quite melodramatic. And I think the whole film kind of, even the photography and everything, it kind of all has this kind of sense of being hyper, I guess turned up. I can't think of a better word, but yeah.
Some of the scenes that were obvious that it was his fantasy. I mean, the first scene where he's sitting outside her house and she comes out and wants him to buy cigarettes, then that's just his imagination, and him seeing her naked several times and so on. That's just his fantasy going on. But then there were some scenes that I thought were very strange, like the mourning of her husband, this burial scene where she's sort of, I don't know, she's like some sort of dark figure, and they travel along in this many people. It just seemed odd, and the fight outside of her house between the soldier and the pharmacist that later becomes or that develops into this trial, it seemed comical and farcical and so on, and then again him losing his virginity as the bombs are dropping down on the city. Everything seems sort of comical, like cartoonish. Even the people, many of the people looks like old cartoons, Italian cartoonish caricatures. And that's why I sort of suspect that this is him thinking back on how he remembers things and not what they actually were.
So does that have an actual function, or is it, because I also watched Cinema Paradiso and I noticed the same like kind of type of farcical humor, which is quite funny, but it's also like providing these like humorous interludes in between this like building, like, you know, sort of hysteria around like, you know, Malena's story. You know, like where he gets the exorcism. That's pretty funny, but it's also kind of showing like this town is really old school. So it has this kind of double function of being really funny, you know, that the priest and his mum actually are convinced that will actually help him. You know, and meanwhile his dad is just saying, you know, oh, he just needs to like get laid or whatever. But yeah, interesting.
Yeah, I definitely agree that the film is playing up a lot of scenes for satirical and comedic value, definitely. But I think that's more, as you said, the kind of style of the director. The reason why I don't think that it's a recollection of him from when he's older is exactly what you've already pointed out, that whenever a scene is in his fantasy, it's made very obvious that it's his fantasy. Like with the example you gave when he imagines Malena asking him to buy cigarettes, we cut back in the way that makes it very obvious that that wasn't real. And the same goes for his fantasies when he thinks of himself in the movies or whatever. They are all very fakey, black and white and stuff. So all the scenes that are fantasies are very clearly his fantasy. So I think it would be a bit odd to interpret it as the whole film just being his fantasy. No, I think it's more what you, Dorit, said, that it's kind of played up and amplified is a good word that he used, which is just the style of the filmmakers in this case. I don't think it has like an in-universe explanation, or at least I don't see why I should interpret it that way.
I think he's also like the director, or I think he wrote the film. I can't remember now, but you know, it's him also laughing at or making fun of these archetypes, which, you know, they're not so far off actual people that you know you might get to know in your life, and particularly when you're a child, these kinds of adult characters can seem quite absurd. But yeah.
But speaking of the humor, because that was something I found to be really odd, the way the film uses and implements its humor. For example, sometimes there are some really serious scenes that are somewhat played for laughs. The example I'm thinking of is when the father almost throws a chair at a child, for example, and it's really horrifying child abuse, but the father is this cartoonish caricature who we are laughing at just because of how over the top he is, but what he's actually doing is pretty traumatizing. And I don't know, I didn't really like this about the film. I think it's a bit tone deaf at times.
I also kind of found the movie a little bit, I don't know, vulgar, maybe, yeah, too cartoonish. I think there was recently at the recent Eurovision a song by either Italy or San Marino that also try to play up the abuse in the traditional family. I don't know whether some of this is real. I mean, probably there is some basis for it. Probably there is some violence, domestic violence in the families, but it's I think it's a topic, a theme nowadays that there's a lot of abuse in traditional families due to religion, due to some other reasons. I think I find it a little bit wrong, because while there may be some abuse in traditional families, there can also be some abuse in more modern families. And I think I didn't like some cartoonishness of violence. I think there were some vulgar scenes, but I think overall, since there was this message of trying to combat certain fetishes, this playing up of violence or sexual deviations or love, I think this was justified by this goal. So I don't know. I don't think that there was. I think it's also possible that the boy recollects on what kind of fantasies he had. So maybe it was all a recollection, or maybe it wasn't. I don't think it matters much, but that's what I think.
I'm just looking at my notes from the first time I watched this film, and it actually wasn't so enjoyable. Even the way you were just talking about how it was kind of making a kind of humorous type of with the music and everything, the humorous little pieces in there were sometimes kind of violent, like and the family scene and things. It wasn't really that comfortable a watch, and I'm just wondering whether just thinking about there was quite a clear the music in those comedic sequences was quite obviously like this is a comedy bit kind of thing. And so it's interesting kind of comparing that with what the director was obviously trying to do, in terms of like somehow challenging our viewpoints on this kind of innocent horseplay at the beginning of the film, where everyone's sort of whistling at Malena, but nothing has actually happened concretely yet. It's kind of interesting. What his intentions were there, and whether he was trying to say anything about violence in the home or not, maybe not.
Yeah, or violence in society as a general. I mean, this being fascist Italy, I sort of think, are there some, should there be some connection, or do we reflect upon that the society at this point
it's tempting, but I don't really know if there's any particularity about it being a fascist, there being, fascists in power there at that time. This is also, it's a small town, and we know that like small communities, they're quite often like whatever the politics is going on in the background or on the national level doesn't really affect things on that small scale. You know, people living like far from the capital or whatever in some small village. It doesn't really matter to them who is in power or, you know, what's happening. Obviously, when the bombs are dropping, it's different. But and also, you know, it's probably not. Yeah, it's probably, as I said, I think it's not restricted to, you know, countries that were under fascist rule. I think that's just kind of that kind of sexist type of culture is, you know, is quite widespread, right? It's not sort of restricted in that way.
Yeah, I also think that when Malena was dragged into the square, when she was getting beaten up, I think that before we are shown that some of the people were despising her because she was taking protection under the German rule. Like those Germans were protecting her, so many of the people were like against her and was despising her. So after the Germans left, I think most of the people, their anger just drew upon her. Like first, the women were jealous of her and all those things, and also the man did not help her because like they were despising her of the fact that she was taking protection and she was giving herself to the foreigners as like I think that it could be seen that way also. Like she was assaulting the protection and the Germans and not the mayor of that town or other people. She was not seeking help to them, so they were also despising her of the fact. So therefore, I think that she was shot very brutally. So we could see the anger of the people, which was on Germans, and they could not have done anything to the Germans. So therefore, their anger was also directed to Malena, and a lot of factors were involved in that also.
As far as I know, this scene with cutting hair, I think as far as I know, it's based on historical events. As far as I know, there were some places in France or Italy where this happened to the women who slept with the Germans.
Oh yeah, in Denmark.
So
in Denmark also.
Yeah, Denmark.
Yes.
Yeah. So as far I read the interview with Giuseppe Tornatore about this film, and he told basically that his parents probably or grandparents were good at telling stories, and a lot of them were set in the times of World War II. So probably that's why maybe that's why the director decided to set this film in World War II. So I think he tried to aim for some kind of historical accuracy, but also show this coming of age story and comment on female gaze and sexism. That's what.
Yeah, I think we're touching on kind of the main point of the entire film, which I think draws a decent parallel to fascist regimes, which is the dehumanization of Malena in different facets. Because even when the film starts and she comes into this town from the outside, as you pointed out quite rightfully, which is an important aspect, I think. And she's this kind of wealthy, beautiful woman who the townspeople, even though the men desire her and the women are kind of jealous of her, but they already all kind of despise her for being different in that sense. But later on, their despise remains, but the image of who Malena is changes from this rich, beautiful woman to this, to say it bluntly, to this dirty whore that they see her as. But of course, neither of which is Malena as a character. And this is what I think makes this film really good, that the film also doesn't allow us as the audience to view Malena as a character, because it doesn't give us anything about her as a character, or next to nothing, I should say. So it kind of forces us into the perspective of the townspeople, who can only see her as an image. And what's interesting about that is that the way the townspeople see her is kind of how she is forced into behaving. They start seeing her as a prostitute long before she actually goes into professional prostitution, but she's forced into this lifestyle just because of how the people around her see her and treat her. That's, I think, kind of the main point in that sense.
But also, and that's back to my previous point about there being all these contradictions, because then this brothel and prostitution is on some levels integrated and accepted, that this young boy, he will become a man, and then his father take him to the prostitutes. But then at the same time, those who are prostitutes are despised and at the very low of society, and these are some of these contradictions within the society.
Yep, that's a great observation. I agree.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Go. Oh, okay. Sorry. I was just wondering, this most recent time that I watched it, we don't see anything negative happening against any of the other women who are engaged in prostitution in the film. It's just her, and the others are kind of more a part of that, the way that society functions, and his own father taking him to a prostitute. It's kind of showed that that there's a brothel there, and it's just part of the culture, and I'm sure that they are less well regarded than other people, but nobody is kind of beating them up or whatever. It's just kind of accepted. But, yeah.
I think it is because of the fact that once Malena she did not have that background before also, and she was belonging to a, as per se, good family. So therefore, and after coming into prostitution also, she does not show any shame. She just walk around the street and walk proudly, and she is sitting with the people and other peoples also. So she is not shaming on her profession or something like that. So I think because of that fact, most of the people are despising her, because they are thinking that you are a prostitute, you are the lowest level of mankind. Why are you sitting with us? Why are you having so much proud? So because of that, I think she was the one who was getting beaten up, and also
Yeah, that's that scene where she walks onto the square and she puts a cigarette in her mouth, and there's tens of lighters come in. That's kind of quite iconic looking.
Yeah, and she's the only one who is how do you say, dangerous to the other families, because the whole trial thing and so on, that I don't think any of the other men will divorce their wives or break up the family because of one of the other prostitutes. It's her, because she is this exceptional beauty or whatever, that she is sort of the family breaker in their mind.
Absolutely, and I think that's also another one of the big themes of the film, is the difference between lust and love. So how I see it, the women, as you explained, aren't going to be jealous of most prostitutes, because they know that their men, even if they go to them, they have no chance of falling in love with them. They're just trying to satisfy their sexual desire and whatever. And as you explained, Malena is an actual threat to that, and that's also kind of an interesting question whether or not the boy actually loves Malena or falls in love with her or just desires her on the superficial level, and especially how he sees himself versus how we as the audience can see him and his acts. I don't know what you think about that. I think that's an interesting question, at least.
So I think that at the end of like there is a scene. So after Malena getting beaten up and after she goes to another town and her husband comes to the town, back into the town. So nobody in the town helps her husband finding Malena. So Renato was the only person in the town who helped her husband in finding Malena. And I think it was not because of lust, it was because of love in the eyes of Renato. Because what would he get in exchange of that? So, like, therefore, he tells her husband that she is in that town and, like, he brought her back.
That's true, but that's only towards the end of the film, as you explained. Yeah, maybe he most definitely developed as a character, but I think at least in the beginning and towards a majority of the film, it's more driven by this kind of adolescent lust rather than actual feelings of love. But you're right, towards the end, I think he definitely has undergone a kind of character arc to where he genuinely cares about Malena.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that there's this, like, I can't remember whether that happens before or after. So at the beginning, he's in this, like, lust mode. And then there's the legal, like, the part in the courtroom where the two guys, one of them says that he's her fiance or whatever, and then that ends up in this courtroom scene. And then at some point he's talking to the statue in the church and he's like, I can't remember what he asks of the statue, basically asking for some kind of favor in relation to her. And then when he spies on her having sex with whoever it is, the first guy, and then he goes back to the church and he's like really mad at the statue because his promise wasn't fulfilled. I might be getting the order wrong a little bit here, but then so he's still kind of thinking very selfishly at this stage. But then when the scene where the lawyer comes to her place and Renato's again spying on her and he watches her being raped basically by the lawyer who wants his payment. I think that's a real turning point for him, and he starts to see her in this more sympathetic, more kind of human way, and that's the beginning of him getting towards this place of understanding, and culminating in him writing this letter to her husband and explaining everything and putting his name on the end, giving him the kind of real story of what went down. But yeah.
I think if we consider the camera, the boy to be stand-in for the camera, I think we can think of the relationship between the boy and Malena as a relationship between audience and Malena. At first, I think we see Malena as a beautiful woman who is attractive, but then we begin to feel sorry for her mistreatment by the people in town, and then I think we want her to have a good life with a husband, and I think this kind of the end when the husband comes back to town, tries to find it. Audience wants Malena to have a husband despite her de facto affair with other men when she was married to him, although she didn't know that she was married to him. She thought she was a widow. despite all this, want her to have a loving husband, and that's why I think the boy gives this this man, this husband, the address where Malena lives, and I think that's why, I guess. At least that's the way I will think about the plot if I were to consider that boy is basically standing for camera for the audience.
Our perspective is not exactly in sync with the one of the boy. Towards the end, yes, I agree. Totally, we as the audience are rooting for the husband and so on, and so he helps her, he helps him, and that's great. I agree with that. But I think, especially towards the beginning, we as the audience have hopefully a more mature look at Malena than the boy obviously has. For example, those scenes when all the boys take their bicycles and follow her on the streets, and then she walks away and they follow her again. I thought that was already really creepy and weird, and okay, they're children, whatever. I guess you can excuse it to some extent at least. But also the other men on the street and so on, they constantly look at her in this very weird and creepy way. And I do think that as the audience, we realize the fault of that behavior before the boy does so. And I think it kind of gets, if the view of the boy and of the audience start here, they kind of converge, and towards the end, we are on the same page.
Yeah, but also the story is that we follow his maturity. But there are other things, the pants that he starts wearing, shorts, and then he has long trousers, and him sitting in this barber chair. That one of the things I remember from my childhood. And so on. So I guess it's really important that Renato is getting older throughout the story and maturing in some way.
Which is kind of ironic when we look at the other townsmen that are grown up and still behave in this very childlike way. I think that's part of the satire, definitely.
Mm. Yeah, I didn't notice something that you mentioned, Philip, about wanting her to be reunited or somehow in this kind of marriage union at the end. I didn't notice that. As I was watching that, I was kind of wanting that outcome, which I guess is a product of the era of the film that it's, the era that the film is set in, let's say, that would be the best outcome for her, really. Because the alternative, who knows what the alternative would be. Wherever she was, I can't remember which big city she'd got the train to, but yeah.
But I'm sorry, I had mixed feelings about the ending, because I actually thought it was at some level a bit tragic, because she had to go back to this city that finally she escaped away from all these horrible people, and then we have this scene in the market where suddenly they are treating her nicely, but don't we have this constantly? Everybody knows. There is this we pretend it didn't happen, but in reality she is now facing her tormentors and just got to must play along, and like everything is fine, even though we know it's not.
But is there any getting away from that for her, regardless of where she is? I don't know. Is it better that she's with someone, she's attached to that person who has more power than her, let's say her husband, and that solves all of her problems, whereas if she was sort of on her own, it would probably just be more of the same.
But my point being that exactly because she is with her husband and her husband is from that same village, so when he travels back, she must go with him instead of they settling in this other town that she moved to. I don't know. Once again, it's this that the woman is below the husband is the main figure or the one who makes the decisions, and she has to travel along.
I'm not saying it's a nice outcome. I'm just saying it's like it's kind of the best situation she could be in, probably in that era. But I don't know.
I'd like to throw in my reading of the ending because I think I'm interpreting it a little bit differently. To me, it reads more like her own decision to come back to this town because for some reason she's grown attached to it, or to some of the people at least, and her coming back after the war, especially after being driven out by the townspeople, reads to me as kind of a statement of liberation, in a sense that now she can live her life in this town and the other people can't do anything about her now. It's kind of the townspeople that are forced to pretend nothing happened and that are forced to treat her nicely now, because she's now on the same level as them. So I think it is, yes, it's tragic in a sense. Of course, we would love for the townspeople to kind of get what's coming to them, in a sense at least. But I still think it's ultimately a happy ending for Malena.
Like a triumph. It's a type of triumph for her to, okay.
To return out of her free will after being treated in this town, how the other, forced to be treated in a certain way and so on, and now she can make her own decision to come back and to live freely and go out to the market again and be treated like a human being, maybe for the first time.
I also think it was her free decision made out of free will, especially since I think the movie said that after 1 year from the boy writing this letter to her husband, did they return? So, I mean, it probably didn't take 1 year for husband to find his wife. So probably they lived for some time together in this city and then decided to return. And I also think the husband wasn't without a leg or an arm. So I think he didn't have so much power to make a wife who doesn't want to return. I mean, there probably was some kind of, I don't know, institute of divorce or separation. So they could have separated, but probably they agreed on some level what would they do next. And they decided to return and live their life normally. I mean, husband is also a victim of fascism and sexism in a way, because I don't know whether he wanted to fight in a war, but he had to. He lost a leg or an arm, a part of his body. In this war, he was considered to be dead. So I think it's although as far as I remember, he was some kind of leadership position. Probably he wanted to, I don't know, but he's also kind of a victim, although whether he was a willing participant in fascism or not, we do not know, but in the way he also suffered from it, in a sense.
Yeah, definitely. And when he's coming back, we also see that he doesn't own his house anymore, for example. Obviously, his wife is gone. No one's willing to talk about it. So, yeah, he's definitely also a victim. I agree with that, yeah. But, the more we talked about this today, I felt was similar and different in a very interesting way, which is the marriage of Maria Braun by Rainer Werner Fassbinder, one
I
of the
was
great.
thinking about this film. Wow, yeah.
Yeah, it just came to my mind that it's a very similar story of also a woman who loses her husband in war, maybe or maybe not, and then is eventually going into prostitution to make money. But it plays out very differently, despite having
Yeah.
similar aspects. It's maybe a very interesting companion piece, I think.
She's such a great character. I just love that film.
Absolutely, yeah. She's a
Yeah.
brilliant character, and the actress, I don't know what's her name, but she's giving such an amazing performance.
Yeah.
I think I could recommend Lazara Felice by Alice Rohrwacher. I think it's kind of different. It's not about sexism, but it's also a coming of age story, and it's also about exploitation. And I liked it much more than Malena. And I think it's also has a lot of religious symbolics, and I found it interesting. So yes, and also I think there are some obvious recommendations like Amarcord by Fellini,
Yeah.
which is also about child growing up in a small town, or 8.5, also by Fellini, or some movies by Vittorio De Sica, like Bicycle Thieves. This movie references them, so
Yeah.
I think.
Amarcord was the one I would say, because it's also this small town Italian city during World War II and the whole fascism, the fascist regime and so on. And every time, all these scenes where he was at the cinema and with this old prostitute, or what she was, sitting there, I really thought it looked so much like some of the scenes from Amarcord. So that would also be the one I would suggest.
And for the film recommendation, I think I would like to recommend a most recent film. I would like to recommend Anura by Sean Baker. And I think, so in the first half of Aruna, we could also see the playfulness of the film, and which then switches into the serious topics. So yeah, I would like to suggest Anura. And thank you.
And if I can give one more recommendation, because someone, I don't remember who, but someone posted in our Discord chat that the film reminded them of Dogville by Lars von Trier, and I also absolutely agree with that. It's also about a woman coming into a small town and being mistreated there, and it's also an absolutely fantastic film, in my opinion, way better than Malena. So yeah, Dogville, definitely another recommendation. But that's it from my side.
Yeah, that was me. I didn't actually think of any recommendation though, because I'd sort of forgotten that we were doing that. But I did watch. I can just make a general recommendation, which isn't really on any related theme. But I watched the other day, and yeah, I found it a really amazing experience, which is Ken Russell's Dante's Inferno, which is. The film's title is referring to, is obviously referring to Dante, the Renaissance poet, but also to Dante Rossetti. It's Ken Russell is like, this film is so full of energy. It's such an amazing watch. like it's just very passionate, and it's got Oliver Reed in it, who's like this very like bombastic English actor. Fantastically written. I just thoroughly enjoyed it. And the first half is not actually about Rossetti. It's about his muse, who's called Elizabeth Siddal, and she kind of became very appreciated as an artist and a poet in her own right. And Oliver Reed gives, like, throughout the film, he gives these reading of Rossetti's poetry, which I'd never really was familiar with before, but the readings are so beautiful. And the character of Elizabeth Siddal is so great. And I think the film, it actually does explore kind of similar films of, I guess, sexism, but also classism. She's a working class woman, and Rossetti's from this kind of higher middle class, and she starts off sitting for him as a model, and then she starts to draw and write herself, and it's a really interesting interplay and exploration of those themes. So yeah, I really recommend it. I really enjoyed it.
How do we end this? Just for so I can do we? Everybody just say goodbye.
Like and subscribe, of course, and share to all your friends
yes.
if you have any.
So yeah. So, but this was our first recording. We have never tried this. We have never met before. Of course, we will get better at this, but it was fun, and we all like to watch and discuss movies, and that's what it's all about. So hope to see you next time.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.